Surfers, we're back in Nica, and today we have 5 tips for you that you're going to need on your next solo surf trip to help you have more success in Nicaragua. Yeah, so tip number 1 might be a no-brainer, but the reality is, 1, you need to learn some Spanish. Nicaragua is not like a lot of other Latin American countries where most people speak English. There will be a small amount of people who speak good English and that you will be able to talk with and who will understand you and you will understand them. But honestly, for the most part, this is going to be the exception to the rule unless you're staying at one of those expensive surf camps, which, as you can see, I don't like to do. The more Spanish you speak, the more options you're going to have in Nicaragua. If you want to find uncrowded waves, if you want to just rent an Airbnb somewhere and surf off the beaten path, you probably are going to need some amount of fluency in Spanish, because you're going to need to buy things, you're going to need to get around, and you're going to need to communicate with the local people. It kind of goes back to the whole no man is an island thing. So the next thing that you should know if you're coming to Nicaragua on a solo surf trip is that tip 2, you should probably bring everything you need that you can't get in your home country with you. There are some things here that are just going to be hard to get. Even things as simple as like surf wax and sunscreen are going to cause you problems here in Nicaragua. They don't import a lot of things, and the things that they import have a lot of high taxes. And so Nicaragua is going to be one of those places that you need to really bring what you need with you, man. And the things that you are going to be able to find here, they're going to be expensive, especially if they're specialty products like surf fins or leashes, or even, you know, surfboards, rash guards, board shorts. You're going to have a hard time finding any of that. And when you do find it, it's going to be really expensive and maybe even like of lesser quality. So let's talk about products that make my life easier in the tropics. As you can see, I'm a ginger. I'm very sensitive to that tropical sun. Badger balm makes everything better. And it doesn't give me zits. Nicaragua is still a developing country in a lot of ways, even though it's really opened its doors to tourists in the last 4 or 5 years. But with that being said, because it's a developing country, you're just going to have a harder time finding a lot of the things you need. And realistically, that's going to segue us into the 3rd tip I can give you, and this one's really important, especially if you plan to score solo or off the beaten path and you're not staying at a surf camp with a restaurant. And that's, you need to buy groceries with you in like the capital or one of the main cities close to where you're going to surf. Especially if you're going to like an Airbnb or a hostel situation. Even though there are stores at the beach, you're not going to be able to find a lot of the things you want or need. Even in the best stores, you're not going to be able to find those things. You're going to have a limited selection, and probably you're only really going to be able to get things like beer and local chips and rice and some beans, maybe meat if you're lucky, you know, like a Coca-Cola. But most things, like even olive oil, sometimes you're not going to be able to find. You're going to be on vegetable oil if you buy at the local beach stores. Whereas if you go to like one of the bigger supermarkets like a Pali, or my favorite is the La Colonia, you'll be able to find everything you want and everything you need. It's the same for lunch meat. In the La Colonia and the Pali, you're going to be able to find nicer lunch meat that's not super processed. Whereas if you buy lunch meat, if you're lucky enough to even find lunch meat in one of these local stores, you know, it's probably going to be really bad and really bad for you. So yeah, it's best to just stop and get groceries. So that means like Managua, there's a Walmart in Managua, or I think it's called Price Mart, but it's basically the same thing. And there's in Rivas, there's Maxapali and La Colonia. If you're going to Popoyo, you should stop there. And if you're going to northern Nicaragua, in Leon and Chinandega, both are places where you can stop, like La Colonia, and buy groceries. And yeah. So now tip number 4, and this one's really important. This one's really important. This should almost be tip number 1, but all the other tips have kind of led us to this. Because of the situation in Nicaragua, with groceries, with speaking Spanish, with supplies, you're gonna need to cook your own food a lot of times. If you're trying to not spend as much money as you would spend on a surf trip to like a first world country or even a second world country, like say Costa Rica, Chile, you know, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic. In Nicaragua, if you're gonna want good food, you're gonna pay for it at a restaurant. And it's gonna be similar to what you pay in the United States. If you want a cheeseburger from McDonald's, it's gonna be $7. And there are local restaurants where you can kind of get some good food, depending on where you're at, for an affordable price. But in a lot of places, that's not even the case. And if you go and stay at one of these surf camps, like those over on that hill, you're gonna be paying $12, $14 for dinner, maybe even more. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Yeah, it's gonna be nice. But ultimately, if you're going on a surf trip and you're spending $30 a day for your room, and that's cheap, you know, if you're spending $100 a day for your room and $60 a day on food, well, man, the cost adds up really quick, and you're up to $1,000 a month before you know it. $1,000 a week for a lot of people if you're staying weekly. That's kind of like more to be expected. Whereas the surf trips I go on and the surf trips I plan, my budget's more around like $600 or $700 a month, including everything, including transport. So yeah, even though it's listed as tip number 4 in this guide, you really need to learn to cook if you're gonna have a successful solo trip in Nicaragua. Okay, and number 5, guys. Number 5 is also equally important if you plan to get around in Nicaragua. You speak Spanish, you got your groceries, you know, cooking and all that stuff. That's great and all that. But you need to realize that you're gonna need to befriend a local taxi driver who's not gonna rip you off. Because that's the only way that you're gonna be able to buy groceries. That's the only way that you're gonna be able to get around from surf break to surf break without paying insane amounts from the English-speaking services, which I don't know if you've ever been here before to Costa Rica or Nicaragua or Central America in general, El Salvador. It's the same in all these countries. If you're going to the English-speaking services off the websites on the internet, you're gonna be paying a premium per service, and that's just the way it is. Whereas if you can, for example, go to Managua or Leon or Chinandega or San Juan del Sur, and you can bargain with a taxi driver and you can tell him, hey, I'm gonna give you a lot of business over the next month, so work with me. They'll work with you because they want those US dollars and they want repeat clients and they want, when you come back, for you to use them again. So yeah, number 5 is super important. Maybe even one of the most important, because you can't even accomplish 2, 3, and 4 without number 5. Without a good taxi driver to drive you around, you're gonna be in bad shape. And if you're renting a car in Nicaragua, oh man, that's a whole nother can of worms. Renting a car is so expensive here, maybe even just as expensive as Costa Rica, especially if you need a 4-wheel drive, because there's limited supply. Cars are really expensive in Nicaragua, even for Nicaraguans, because of what we talked about before with the import taxes. So here's a bonus tip. Yeah, there's a bonus tip. I said there was gonna be 5, but there's a bonus tip in this video. And the bonus tip is really, if you're going to a new place, even if you can find that property on the internet without using a third party like booking.com or Airbnb, especially Airbnb is great for this. You want to pay a little bit more kind of to rent through Airbnb or booking.com, because what they're going to do is they're going to have a lot of consumer protections for you that you're not going to have if renting directly from the property. Like, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, here in the same area of Chinandega, we rented a a camp. I kind of like, it was like a camper kind of setup from a guy here. Like, I'm not gonna tell you where it is or what his name was, but we got there and the grass hadn't been cut in months, like a month. And here in Nicaragua, there are snakes. And there was an outdoor bathroom that if you had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, you had to like walk out of the house and walk to the outdoor bathroom. And we saw 2 snakes in 6 days. And that's when we were like, man, you could stumble out of the house in the middle of the night and you could step on a snake and you could get bit. And we're in the middle of rural Nicaragua. Bad things could happen to you really fast in that situation. And so we contacted Airbnb, and not only did they refund us for the month, they also gave us $400 to find a new place and get out of there for the next 3 days. I think it was up to like $150 a night or something for like transport and like a new hotel while we figured out where we were going next. And that was super crucial to not like break the budget, because in Nicaragua, especially here in high season, most things are rented. Like if you don't rent ahead of time, your selection on hotels and Airbnbs are going to be limited, because there's only so much rental property around the surf. And if you want to be at a rental property around the surf, you're going to really need to act ahead of time. And in that situation, we had no choice but to rent short term, you know, because we were basically up the creek without a paddle. So I hope you enjoyed these 5, 6 tips on, you know, your next solo trip to Nicaragua. They're gonna come in really useful. So if you did enjoy them, please consider giving the channel a like and subscribe. You know, we're here making content for another 7 weeks or so, and then we're off to the next thing. This is Eric from Sigma Surf. I hope everyone's having a good day. Disfruta la pura vida.